Hello and welcome to Horse Illustrated's webinar series. My name is Mary Cage. I'm the digital manager here at Horse Illustrated, so I'll be your host today. And of course, we are so honored to welcome Dr. Rick Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell, thank you so much for being here today.
Happy to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So obviously, if you're here, you know the wealth of knowledge that Dr. Mitchell brings to us today. He has long since served as a veterinarian, of course, including for the US Equestrian Team, and he's a part owner of Fairfield Equine Associates, with focuses mainly in performance-related issues, lameness, imaging, those sorts of things, and of course has served and continues to serve on various boards. So really dealing with a lot of knowledge here today, so we're excited to dive in. The way it'll work is I'll run through some questions from the Horse Illustrated side of things, and then we'll open up the floor to you guys as an audience. We did have a few questions that were submitted beforehand, so we'll kind of start with those. But anybody here is welcome to submit questions. There should be a Q&A button on your screen, and that's just where you'll type in any questions that you have. I'll moderate those and ask them on your behalf. You can wait until that kind of end portion to send those in, or if you think of something throughout the webinar, feel free to type in and submit. So with that, Dr. Mitchell, I want to kind of start with asking you, how did you first fall in love with horses? And on that note, can you tell us about your first horse or pony?
Oh, you'll make me cry. I'll get all misty about that. I've been told I cry at supermarket openings too, so we'll try to deal with this. Well, I was blessed with having grown up in a horsey family. My mother was a real classic horsewoman, had been trained as a child by her grandfather. Had fox hunted and showed. She had competed in both saddle seat and hunter jumper competitions as a young person, became a licensed judge in both saddle seat and hunter jumper. And so I don't ever remember learning how to ride. I've often told people that I didn't grow up wealthy, but I grew up privileged because I had the opportunity to sit on some fabulous, fabulous horses because my mother was such a good horsewoman and a good chooser of talent. And so that's how it all started for me. I really don't remember learning how to ride. I started riding, 3-4 years old, and by the time I was 6, I was showing my pony and walk trot classes and costume classes and things like that. And then it evolved on that we fox hunted, and we had customers that fox hunted, and so my early days of jumping were in the hunt field. And I can remember we had a guy that worked for us. His name was Junior, and Junior used to ride along behind me and pick me up every time I fell off in the hunt field. But it was, one of those things where it was horses were just the way of life. And we had a farm outside of Greensboro, North Carolina. And as time went on, I started showing, and my real love was not the saddle seat stuff that my mom was still doing to some extent, but the hunter jumper type of activities. And so my very first really nice horse was a half thoroughbred pony that was actually chestnut and white paint. And it was a beautiful pony, conformed like a very, very nice thoroughbred. And I can remember when we first started showing her at hunter shows in Virginia, people sort of mocked the fact that I was riding, my Western horse. And but in fact, she was, as people learned, a model winner. She was a beautifully conformed horse, and subsequently became a very, very good pony hunter. And I had great success with her as a 12, 13, 14, and maybe 15-year-old. I'm not real tall. I'm 5'8", so I didn't attain that until I was probably 17 or 18. So
Mhm.
I was able to ride the ponies for quite a long time.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I started riding some lovely thoroughbreds that my mom had bred or purchased or wrangled a deal with and traded and this, that, and the other. And so, those were in the days before the warm bloods were
Yeah.
even really introduced very much in the hunter jumper world. But So that's how I got into it,
Yeah.
and it's in your blood after you do it like that. I played other sports and as well, particularly baseball and
Okay.
hockey in the winter.
Mhm.
Couldn't interfere with the horse showing though. The
Yeah.
baseball took a strain,
Yeah.
but we had the opportunity to fox hunt in the winter with our customers and then show in the summer with other customers, and it was quite a good learning experience for me.
Absolutely. And what a fun way to get to spend your childhood and teen years, and just really build that foundation and love for the horse. So, and when did that love of the horse, when did you know that you wanted to take that and become an equine veterinarian? What kind of led to that?
Well, it was, my mom introduced me to the fact that being a professional horseman is a tough life,
Yeah.
and I have infinite respect for those people that do that because, there's ups and downs and periods of success and periods of failure and so forth. And I really enjoyed the riding and so forth, but I also loved science. And we had several brood mares, and I began to be more responsible for watching the brood mares when they were close to foaling and so forth, and helping with the new offspring and so forth. This will, gave me the chance to see some of the things that go on. Just with husbandry and so forth. And We had some youngsters that had some illness issues and so forth, and I had to help take care of those. And then later on, when I was a teenager, we had a couple of really lovely horses that got hurt and had to have, nursing care and wound care and that sort of thing. And our veterinarian came and, told us what we needed to do and basically put me in charge of, cleaning the wounds and taking care of them and bandaging the horses, et cetera, whatever. And, I, having had some success in seeing some lovely horses recover from some injuries and so forth, I thought, I love science. I really wanted to be a doctor.
Mm.
My great grandfather and my aunt and my uncle were all physicians, and I thought, I really love science, but I didn't want to be separated from the horses, and so that's why I really pursued the veterinary aspect of it.
Yeah, makes perfect sense to kind of merge those two passions and keep horses as part of your career. And it can be obviously any industry or career in horses is difficult. And being a vet is certainly one of the most difficult ones, but I know it's also rewarding to be able to help these horses recover and from whatever ailment they're facing. So we'll kind of dive into those sorts of things and the different things you encounter in your career and veterinary methods and things like that.
Sure.
Um, but of course, you've gotten to spend a lot of time with the US Equestrian Team, and that includes several Olympic Games. Do you have any standout memories from that? Not necessarily the Olympics, but just what it's meant to you to be able to serve the team.
I had the good fortune in that when I graduated from veterinary school, the last couple of years of veterinary school, I went on a military health profession scholarship, and I was actually able to attend the last 2 years of veterinary school free. and being paid a salary to go to
Wow.
school as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. The Air Force doesn't have that program anymore, but I still think there may be some Army programs. I'm not really sure, but at any rate, I wasn't really sure where I was going to settle, what I was going to do, if I was going to do an intern in residency, or what I was going to do. So I had this opportunity to get this scholarship and therefore get out of veterinary school free of debt so that it wasn't a rush to have to go right to work and pay debt. So um, I did that, and it was great because it gave me some real good background in keeping records and meeting timelines and that sort of thing and so forth. And during the last year that I was on active duty, I started looking for a job, and I happened to find a job that was available in New England, in Connecticut, Fairfield, Connecticut. I actually had some relatives that lived in Greenwich, and so I was, somewhat familiar with the area, and I had the opportunity to ride and show horses in front of a number of people from that region of the country. Turns out that the doctor whose practice I found an ad for actually worked for a lot of those people. And I went, whoa, this is interesting. These are the kind of horses I want to go to. I was never really drawn to the racehorse world. I did work at the track a little bit as a student, but I really was drawn. I would really felt like that the hunter jumper world was going to progress, and because it was growing so much while I was a junior, couldn't believe the numbers of horses we were running into at competitions in the latter years of my junior years. And so this is where I'd like to be. So I interviewed with Dr. Howard Raven. Uh, he was sort of a legend in his own world up there in Fairfield, Connecticut. He worked for the likes of Emerson Burr, Victor Hugo Vidal, uh, uh, George Morris, and Carol Fallon, Jim Fallon, some classic names,
Mhm.
yeah, Judy Richter, those people, and those were all people that I knew of, and I thought, wow, this would be a great place to go. I hope I can get this job, and as it turned out, it did,
Mhm.
and so that's where I started, and it gave me the opportunity to be introduced to a dream world as far as I was concerned, as far as the kind of horses that I was going to be able to take care of and work under his mentorship. And as time went along, I had the good fortune of meeting a number of other people that had really fantastic horses. And I met the likes of Bruce Burr and Leslie Burr and Brian Linehan and a few of those people that really were good trainers and coming up in the world themselves because they were sort of a little bit my age bracket. And we had some great interaction there. And I think the first Olympic horse that I ever took care of was a horse by the name of Albany, that was owned by Debbie Dolan and Charles Dolan, and Leslie rode it. And then the other horse that accompanied that horse as the alternate horse to LA in 1983, a long time ago, was a horse by the name of Boing that belonged to Jane Clark, Jane Forbes Clark, who eventually became president of the American Horse Shows Association, which was the predecessor of the United States Equestrian Federation.
Mhm.
And so those two horses went to LA, and guess what? They came home with a gold medal. And so
Mhm.
this was like, wow, this is really cool. Put a lot of effort into Albany. Was a little tricky, but he was a great horse, and we got him there, and he did great. And of course, I had the help of a phenomenal veterinarian by the name of Danny Marks, and so that was my introduction to the Olympic world. But I didn't go to LA, but I prepped the horses before they went.
Mhm.
And my first Olympics was Barcelona in '92, and I was a sort of an accompanying or uh, a consulting veterinarian. I was given official credentials and everything, and got a certificate of participation. But I was there side by side with Danny and also Alan Leslie, another person who had a lot of influence on my life. But I had the opportunity subsequent to that to take care of some phenomenal horses. Jim Twist,
Mm.
Big Ben, VIP, Extreme. I can go on and on about the horses back in the day, and if people look those up, they'll realize what great, fantastic horses there were. One of my favorite ones that went to Barcelona was a little thoroughbred by the name of For the Moment, who was Horse of the Year several years, and it was just a phenomenal horse, and was a silver medal winner at the games in Korea in '88. So that was my early introduction with the Olympic horses, and I always said it was just a matter of showing up, being on time, and doing the best you can with what you got, and that's what I did, and I had the opportunity to go on to be the team vet at Atlanta and then in Sydney, and then got set back a little bit after that because of some back injury. And so I had to sort of step back, and Dr. Tim Ober took over with the jumpers subsequent to that. And then later, I moved over to dressage and did dressage for 3 Olympic Games. So, it was quite an experience. I think the most well-organized and most beautiful Olympic Games I went to was London. It was spectacular. The way they did it, the way they prepared the facility, the setting of it in the with the view of the Queen's house and so forth, and where the stadium was and everything was just awe-inspiring, and was really, really, really. Now I put my phone on mute, and I don't really understand why it's ringing. So let me just get rid of that.
No worries. I don't think we can hear it too much, so not a bother.
Okay, good. At any rate, those are probably my last Olympics that I actually did was Rio, and we had a great dressage team, and they were up against some very, very stiff competition from the Germans and the Danish and so forth, and the Brits. And but we did end up with a bronze medal, which was really an accomplishment, I felt, at that point in time, given the competition that came from Europe, and that was a great experience as well.
Absolutely. I mean, what just a special honor to be able to, first and foremost, even go to the Olympics, and experience all those different games across the world. But just imagine telling your younger self that you got to work with horses like Jim Twist, and it's just amazing. So
yeah.
And I'm sure you have plenty of stories, but
yeah, some I can't tell.
Yeah, for sure.
But mostly good ones, mostly humorous ones, to say the least.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. We'll go ahead and dive into more of the, vet medicine side of things. And as we mentioned, your primary interest are with those performance-related issues and lameness and things like that. Kind of a loaded question, but can you dive into maybe some of the most common performance-related issues that you see, and maybe what treatment for those looks like?
Okay. Yes. Well, first of all, I want to tell everybody that I chose somewhat later in life to become board certified in sports medicine and rehabilitation. And I had spent a lot of years testing products and working for some pharmaceutical companies relative to developing some products and so forth. And I'd had the opportunity to speak and lecture to a number of meetings over the years, and so when the time came to the College of Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation, was an opportunity for me to refine my skills a little bit and so forth, and so I certainly did that. But it was basically a training. All I had done before was a training for that. I would say that relative to the sport horse, to the hunter, jumper, and dressage horse, I think to say that there's any one common problem is a little difficult, but I can say this: no foot, no horse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very, very, very important to pay attention to hoof conformation and how a horse is shod, and to work very, very closely with the farrier to maximize, quote, foot balance, if you would, and movement that is favorable to the horse with a good flat landing foot, and a breakover that's favorable to not stress the joints and tendons and ligaments. And I think that we do see in the jumpers and dressage horses, we do see a fairly significant degree of suspensory desmopathy. It can be in the form of suspensory branch inflammation and injury. It can also be in the, I'm sorry, they won't give up.
You're good. I don't think, again, I don't think we're
No, I
hearing
don't
it
need
too
to
much,
answer.
so.
They can leave me alone. I'm going to turn the phone off, and I'll call them back later, because it's just so my audience knows I am not in active going to see horses practice, so I am not ignoring a client that has an emergency, please. I would never do that. Anyway, but I would say that, certainly suspensory and so many suspensory ligament issues can be related to how the horse is shod, how long the toe is, how out of balance the foot is, does it have a sheared heel, is a horse landing, in an unlevel fashion on the foot, and what stresses does that put on the suspensory branches, and then also, of course, if extremely high heel and can cause fetlock drop and unusual stress on the suspensory body and so forth. So I really think that, good hoof conformation and good shoeing, and having a good working relationship with the veterinarian and the farrier is really, really important. As far as other issues are concerned, we certainly see our share of osteoarthritis and the early aspects of that. And those can be a byproduct of also how the horse is conformed, and also how the horse is indeed shod, but also how hard the horse has worked and how much repetitive trauma the horse is subject to. And a lot of the tendon and ligament injuries are also a byproduct of chronic repetitive trauma. And I sort of try to coach my owners and so forth that, you start out with a horse and conditioning it with slow, steady exercise, with adequate breaks and so forth. You get the horse fit musculoskeletally by, just careful, repetitive exercise, but not the same thing all the time. And for example, the things to help prevent chronic injury, for example, if a horse is piaffing well, and you ask it to do it a couple of times, and it sits there and piaffs beautifully, is beautifully engaged and so forth, and moves out of the piaff into like a passage without any misbehavior or anything, quit. Don't do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it again leads to more strain, leads to more fatigue, leads to injuries. So there's a fine balance between doing it enough to make sure that the horse does it and does it correctly, and that you have that communication with the horse. I understand that fully, but doing it and doing it and doing it to the point of the horse being fatigued isn't accomplishing what you want. So, the not only do the ligaments respond to that sort of thing, but the skeletal system responds to chronic repetitive trauma, and can result in the lack of adaptation to areas in the bone just underneath the joint surface, which can result in the development of osteoarthritis, or at least arthrosis. And so those things have to be, considered. And so, and there's a lot of things more involved. And I know you were going to ask me some other questions about prevention of some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do think that for our sport horses, musculoskeletal issues are our number one concerns. And then probably GI health is one of our other major concerns, and nutrition and how they're cared for are key in managing the all of these things. So anyway, we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's very insightful, and it really does kind of cover what I was going to ask in terms of what advice you would kind of give to owners and trainers for keeping a sport horse sound and healthy. And obviously, foot comes first, and avoiding overuse, things of that nature. But do you think there are maybe things that owners, riders kind of forget or leave out of their program when it comes to keeping a horse sound and healthy?
Well, I think it's very important also to look at the nutrition of the horse and to make sure that the horse is being fed a good balanced diet. I think it sometimes can be based on recommendations from your veterinarian, but it may also be recommendations from a nutritionist or whatever. It depends on the breed of the horse a little bit and what the activity of the horse is, and also the age of the horse. A younger horse is probably, going to need more calories and will tolerate, a higher carbohydrate diet perhaps than an older horse. We have to think about things that we know that warm bloods are somewhat predisposed to metabolic disorders, that 25%, so it is said, 25% of warm bloods over 15 years of age develop PPID or Cushing syndrome. And so, those are things you need to think about in the nutritional management, providing adequate vitamins and minerals with controlling the amount of non-structural carbohydrates, low sugar, higher fiber, medium protein, 10, 12, maybe 14% in a very hard-working horse, that sort of thing. But there was a period of time where high-fat diets were being advocated very strongly. I'm not so sure that that's altogether necessary, but moderate fat is beneficial and helps the metabolism in the hindgut and so forth. So those are things that need to be looked at. Don't throw them a bucket full of crimped oats and a bale of alfalfa hay and think that you necessarily managed each horse. Some horses will do all right on that, but others, no, are not going to. So it's some advice from, like I say, a nutritionist or a veterinarian. And even some feed companies can be very, very helpful in guiding the rider and trainer in how to care for the horse.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we all know the dangers of colic and how prone horses are to ulcers and things like that. So
Yep.
just as much as the soundness of their legs and musculoskeletal system is important, we got to remember those dangers and all of that. So that's very good insight. And do you think there's any maybe misconceptions that horse owners have about keeping their horses sound and healthy? Like, for example, we all know, how popular joint injections can be, and some people might have some misconceptions about when those are needed and things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that troubled me for many, many years in practice was that I would get a call and they would say, it's time for some maintenance injections. And I would say, okay, maintenance injections. Well, are you having an issue with your horse? Oh, no, it's really going well, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, let's have a look and let's go over it. And, let's do a good physical exam and, we'll do some, palpation, inflections and so forth. And then we'll watch you work the horse and we'll see what we've got. And, we go from there. And in fact, many times, what the trainer or rider felt was possibly a problem was, in fact, yeah, maybe an early issue and needed some attention. And then sometimes the problems were on the other end of the horse. It just depends on the individual situation. Joint injections are a necessary part of caring for sport horses. However, they're not the ultimate and only answer. But there are certainly times when care of the joint with a intra-articular medication can be very valuable. Corticosteroids still have a place in acute inflammation, ruling out real significant damage to the joint. I do think that they can put the fire out and many times allow a horse to carry on in a shorter period of time with its activities. But many of the new products that are orthobiologics, as they're referred to, including uh, platelet-rich plasma, IRAP, which is made from the horse's blood, um, Prostride, which is a sort of a mixture a little bit there of those two. Also, some of the newer synthetic products, polyacrylamide products, may also offer protection for the joint surface and so forth in the event of inflammation. And in many cases, it may be a combination of those drugs that might give you, in fact, a longer period of recovery or period of soundness
Mhm.
than any one of those alone. Sometimes it's a matter of calming the joint down and then providing a better environment for the joint to continue to work. So we've learned a lot in the last 20 years for sure
Mhm.
about uh, intrasynovial injections, I think, that have moved us fortunately, into the 21st century. And we're not just sticking Depomedrol into every joint that we encounter because that's not good for them. So
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of plays into my next question is kind of how have you seen equine veterinary medicine evolve over the years?
It's evolved profoundly. I have the the privilege of having practiced veterinary medicine for 50 years before I said, okay, I'm going to go into semi-retirement. And that was just this past fall. Uh, I started practicing before, believe it or not, before some people say, "Oh yeah, probably before the Model T was invented," but no, but I started practicing actually before the personal computer, the PC, actually was really in use.
Mhm.
And so when that happened, oh my goodness, all kinds of things happened.
Mhm.
We suddenly had initially fiber optic endoscopes, and then suddenly later, not too many years later, we had video scopes with a video chip that was a byproduct of the computer industry. We had ultrasound machines that were small computers that we could carry into the field and diagnose initially reproductive issues and so forth, but then subsequently using them for the diagnosis of tendon and ligament injuries and other things, abdominal problems, respiratory problems, scanning the chest, et cetera, et cetera. All of this developed in the 80s and into the 90s. And then we got digital radiography in the late 80s. And then we got digital radiography that was DR, that was direct exposure of the x-ray to a plate, and boom, we had an image instantly on a computer. And all of those things enhanced our diagnostic capabilities. None of those replace a thorough physical examination. However, it has greatly enhanced our ability to understand what's going on once we
Mhm.
have figured out where is the problem, or do we get an idea of where the problem is. But now we've got, in addition to nuclear scintigraphy, which became, more common in the 90s and into the 2000s in more practices, but we have um, magnetic resonance imaging, which our practice in Connecticut was the third practice in the United States to get the standing MRI that has become so popular in many areas, and it just opened doors for us. For that was over 20 years ago, 21 years ago almost now, and the ability to diagnose distal limb problems, etc. Uh, when I graduated veterinary school, if a horse blocked in the heel, if it didn't have any bruises and it didn't have horrific conformation, it probably had navicular disease.
Mm.
Well, that's just not that's not true. That's not
Yeah.
true. It could be a dozen different things in the palmar aspect of that foot. And with the new technologies we have and the better radiographs and MRI and CT, we have the ability to pinpoint what it is and very often fix it or at least manage it so that horses can continue to have productive careers. So a lot's happened, really a lot's happened.
Yeah, it's truly amazing
And
the strides.
drugs, let me just say this.
Sure.
When I graduated from veterinary school, we had phenylbutazone, okay? Banamine didn't come along until the early 80s.
Mm.
But when we talked about bute's an anti-inflammatory. Okay, that's great. But what does it do? Well, it probably inhibits some enzymes, but we're not really sure. And then subsequently, it became more obvious exactly what enzyme systems that anti-inflammatory nonsteroidals were inhibiting and so forth. And it became easier to understand where we should use them and where we shouldn't use them, and where we might want to use corticosteroids instead. Or nowadays, maybe we want to use more natural products like interleukin receptor antagonist protein, IRAP, or the other products that are in PRP that might be more appropriate for the kind of inflammation that's going on in a joint or whatever. So, all of those things have evolved, and it's fantastic how, much more science-based our veterinary practice on the horse is now than it was years ago. But the bottom line is a thorough exam, accurate, taking the time to really look at the horse still hasn't changed.
Sure. Absolutely. So obviously we've made these massive strides, but there's always growth to be had. So in what ways would you like to see veterinary medicine and really the equine industry as a whole continue to grow and evolve?
Well, I'm gonna get a little philosophical here because
Sure.
I think that we need to keep in mind very much the sport and the license to do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the caring for the horse, truly caring for what's the best interest of the horse's welfare, is really important. It's just not about just getting them to the ring. It's about trying to get them to the ring in a way that they can go to the ring again and again. And I really think that it's really, really important to think about is in the best interest of the health of the horse. And does the horse need a break? Does it need to have some time off? Okay, I know if it shows again next week, it'll be champion of the circuit and blah, blah, whatever. But is it hurt? Does it need time off, or are we going to artificially boost it up? And and maybe we get it through another class or something like that. Maybe that's not harmful. But on the other hand, a diagnosis is essential, and we need to understand. And so I think that keeping in mind that the horse is our friend, and horses, a lot of them truly, I think, enjoy doing what they do. Uh, you know, the and I'm embarrassed, I can't remember now, the German horse that's such a sensation and that was a gold medal winner and so forth. That horse loves to jump. There's no doubt in my mind he loves to jump. There was no doubt in my mind that older horses that we knew years ago, Jim Twist, For the Moment, uh, you know, and Big Ben and all of those guys, those horses loved to do what they did, or they wouldn't have done it the way they did it. And but we have to keep that in mind that we need to care for them to the greatest degree we can, and allow them to recover and continue to do their job in such a way that we don't pound them into the ground, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that some of our big challenges are um, picking and choosing where we go, picking and choosing how often we compete. Uh, Again, like I said, how hard you train. And a fit horse is essential, but an overfit horse or an overtrained horse isn't going to do you any more good. In fact, it may be a detriment, you know. And so I don't know if I answered your question or not,
No,
but
absolutely. I think we all need to remember that the horse is why we're all here. And like you said, the horse is our friend, and they can only communicate so much with us. They can't speak to us how they're feeling. It's up to us to kind of figure that out. Um, but yeah, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them. And it's our job to kind of be their caretakers and their guardians. So I think that's something that the whole of the equine industry needs to keep in mind, obviously for the good of the horse first and foremost, but obviously also for the public perception aspect of it as well. And kind of a bit on that note, but just in general, how can equine owners help support veterinarians?
well, I think engaging the veterinarian in a, you know, uh, sort of a symbiotic relationship. In other words, don't call, don't practice reactionary veterinary medicine. Practice preventive care.
Mhm.
Having the horses evaluated periodically if you're, you know, really in it for the sport. I know that that can result in some bills and things like that, but paying later to fix them also results in a lot of bills. And so I think that, you know, if the veterinarian is involved in giving you advice on care and products that might help manage joint disease or might manage metabolism and that sort of thing. Interacting with the farrier, if there was a question here and there. These things are all really important to, uh, you know, going forward to try to care for the horse. I think you know, a period, you know, I've always with my clients, I tried to develop a system where we looked at the horses on at least you know, a quarterly basis. When we're at a horse show, when we're in Florida, in Wellington or in Ocala or whatever, and the horses are showing every week, it's very often that I'd be looking at the horses, if not every week, every other week,
Mhm.
just you know, just checking them over, flexing and jogging them, maybe watching them work under saddle, just to see if anything's arisen. Um, you know, trainers and owners can be a little what we call barn blind. And so it's nice every now and then just to have a veterinarian come in and just give an objective opinion.
Sure.
You know, and it doesn't mean they have to start injecting joints. You know, maybe they recommend a supplement, maybe they recommend an Adequan series, you know, something like that. Or maybe they say, hey, carry on doing exactly what you're doing because the horse is looking good. But call me the first time that anything pops up that, you know, we don't expect. But it's like I say, it's a symbiotic relationship. You got to work together.
Sure.
And I think that's much more productive than waiting for something to break and then go, oh, we got a problem, we got to call a vet.
Absolutely. Makes total sense. So actually my last question for you before we dive into audience questions, so that's a cue for our audience. If you have anything, you can start submitting those in the Q&A, is what advice do you have for aspiring veterinarians?
Be ethical, which is very hard for young veterinarians to be. You can say, oh, well, I'll be ethical. Well, wait till you have some trainer that's got 20 horses in his barn and he said you can take care of them. And they want you to do something that's just maybe not quite ethical or quite in the best interest of the welfare of the horse or the owner, or it's deeply against show regulations. Um, I remember, and I'm not, I I got horses to the ring for 50 years. So, I don't have a halo, but I can sleep at night because I feel like that I took care of the horses in a manner that was not against the best interests of their welfare. But I will tell you a story very quickly to the young
Sure.
veterinarians or young aspiring veterinarians that might be watching this. That many years ago, the first year I was in Florida for an extensive amount, back in the early 80s. I had gone down there because several of my clients had gone down and were having some problems with horses arriving with significant respiratory disease. And so we worked out a plan to try to alleviate some of that with fitness, vaccination, better ventilation, preemptive nutrition, supplementation, so forth. Anyway, but so I get down to Florida after maybe my second visit, and I have this well-known trainer walk up to me and he says, "Yeah, you're a young guy. I hear you're doing a really good job, and they're really pleased with you here, and I'd like for you to come over and look at a couple of horses of mine. I got three hunters that need to have their tails blocked." And I looked at him and uh, I don't know how to do that. Of course I did, but I didn't do it,
Weren't gonna do
and
it.
I wouldn't do it. And I didn't work for him. And I lost a barn of probably 15 or 20 horses. I don't care, you know.
Yeah.
I got three more clients because I said that,
There you
you
go.
know, and that's the thing, and it's not that you have to be pure and white and holier than thou, but you've got to remind yourself, what am I doing to that animal? Blocking its
Yeah.
tail so it can't swish its tail, you
Right.
know? uh, to win a ribbon, So I think you have to put it all in perspective, and you have to think about, you know, what what can I do to better the performance of these horses, and be able to revisit them at a later time and realize that I actually did something well for the horse and so forth. And I think that's sometimes can be difficult, especially for the younger veterinarian. It's not always that easy for us older folks either. But
Right.
but your skin gets a little thicker as you get a little older. So
It's just as you said a moment ago, the horse is our friend, and that's what we have to
yep,
remember. So,
yep, for sure.
yeah. All right. Well, we'll dive into some audience questions. Kim said, you talked about the advancements in veterinary medicine that you've experienced over your career. What new veterinary tools and treatments are currently in development now that you think may show promise for the future?
Well, I think there's a lot of new drugs that are being developed to manage pain that are of following along some different avenues of enzyme inhibition and nerve blocking and so forth. And I don't mean like a local anesthetic, but I mean centrally and so forth. Some of those products may help us a lot in managing the painful horse, the laminitic horse, the horse with severe colic or post-surgical pain, that sort of thing. I think that there's some new things coming forth on that. I just read a very nice article that if anyone wanted, actually one of my partners, Rylan Edwards, passed it on to me, and it was really quite interesting. And if anybody wanted to get it from me, I can get it for you later. I don't remember the journal it came out of, but I can get it. But I think the continued development of orthobiologics, they're continuing to refine down products that we call, for example, ECMs or extracellular matrices. That We realize now that there are certain substances within tissue, fetal tissue, and mesenchymal cell tissue that are what trigger the response to heal and trigger the attraction of progenitor cells and so forth. And I think we're going to see continued development in the area of orthobiologics and tissue healing that will help our horses tremendously. I think better understanding of metabolic issues. There are a number of newer drugs that have come out that help to manage insulin resistance, and we're learning more and more about using those. And I think that is going to help us a lot with preventing laminitis and recognizing metabolic issues earlier on so that we can, keep those things from happening. Um, there's continued advances in imaging. Technology grows and grows and gets better and better. And now we have, various types of contrast imaging and CT and MRI that even enhance more our ability to see things with those technologies. And I think that there's likely to be PET scans, for example. You didn't hear much about PET scans. It's similar to nuclear scintigraphy, but that's a newer process that helps to identify lesser areas of inflammation that might have otherwise been missed on MRI or a CT scan or whatever. So I think we have, multiple areas. I think also better understanding of the horse's cardiovascular system and the respiratory system and how to keep it healthy. We're beginning to see now that some of the orthobiologics can be useful in moderating and mitigating some of the inflammatory problems in the respiratory tract of the horse. And I think that's pretty exciting. So those are the things that come to my mind first.
Sure. Yeah, it's amazing the strides that are being made, and who knows where we'll be even another 5 years from now with veterinary medicine. So as you mentioned, obviously nothing tops a physical exam. That will always be
Nope.
the main thing. But Cheryl did ask that she's got a horse that hops and bucks through one of his flying changes, and she's wondering if you think that could be an issue medically or could be behavioral. And yeah, she's just kind of wondering what might be the cause there.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
It definitely could be a physical issue. It could also have become a somewhat learned issue. A lot of horses that hop and buck, especially when you ask them to do a lead change, may have sacroiliac pain or may have lower back or pelvic pain, but not all of them. Some of these horses may also have equine gastric ulcer syndrome or equine glandular gastric disease. And they increase pressure in their abdomen when they're asked to tighten up and swap leads can cause, reflux flow into the stomach that can be irritating and cause them to react adversely. But that horse, I would recommend that it have a thorough physical exam and to try to determine if there are issues that demonstrate, that horse might have some obvious, if carefully looked at, it might have some obvious myopenia or muscle atrophy on one side of its back or croup or whatever that might indicate that it's got some pelvic or low back pain, or possibly a hind limb soreness that is, maybe only bothers it when you ask it transiently to put more weight on that limb, as you would in the lead change. So, but I think that some do develop a habit. I've found that most of the ones that behave that way, something's bugging them somewhere. And I mean, it could even be on the other end of the horse. It could be its neck, its mouth. But it's certainly worth investigating from a physical examination standpoint.
Absolutely. Then from our pre-submitted questions, Ginny wants to know, what's the most unique place horses have taken you?
The most unique place?
Yes.
Oh, golly, there was a place that we went in the Austrian Alps for a dressage show, and I cannot remember the name of it. I have pictures of it. It was just a fantastic, beautiful place. that was in the Austrian Alps, and they were showing, and you look all around, and there are all these snow-capped mountains around you in the middle of the summertime. I mean, it was unbelievable. That's one. Hong Kong for the 2008 Olympic Games. That was that was pretty cool. I've still got a bag of fake Rolex watches that I bought while I was there.
Awesome.
But that was a fantastic place to be because the Hong Kong racetrack was
Hmm.
one of the just a phenomenal facility, and the amount of racing that goes on there, and the amount of millions of dollars that are the handle each day there is unbelievable. It's very, very popular in Hong Kong. Is thoroughbred racing. So that was a really also a neat place to go. Australia was cool.
Yeah.
You know, I went to Morocco once and that was interesting. I went to India. I've been a lot of places, and the horse has taken me to every continent in the world except Antarctica,
That's amazing.
and it's been a great ride, very great ride.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, we have time for one more question. Molly was asking, what are some signs that it's time for your horse to retire?
When he doesn't want to play anymore, when you're having to treat little things after little things, when it becomes apparent that it takes, um, more medication than is reasonable. Also, when the performance just isn't there. It's hard to say. Every horse is very different. I talk about some of the great horses that had the opportunity to care for, and I think of For the Moment, who was a little thoroughbred that came off the racetrack,
Mhm.
uh, that had won, I think, in his whole career of many races, nearly 50 races. He had won like $15,000. He became a show jumper and horse of the year multiple times and won in the 80s, like $1.7 million, I think.
Wow.
And he continued to horse show and win into his early 20s.
Mm.
Okay. But then he, how hard do you want to go? How much more do you want to push him? So his owner, who was a great horsewoman, Lisa Jaquin, said, that's enough. Fred served me well, and I think you just kind of have to see. I think if it's requiring an an unusual amount of maintenance, if the horse just doesn't bounce back from lameness treatments and so forth like it used to, if it's crabby, if it doesn't want to go, a few things like that I think, most horses will give it to you as long as you ask for it. But I think that, once they get much over 20, they need to have a lesser life, not necessarily full retirement.
Mhm.
Maybe you turn one of the most lovely horses that I ever got to ride and show, and I actually won the North American League adult jumper finals with in Harrisburg, was a 17 coming 18-year-old warm blood that Jane Clark owned by the name of Fortis. And he had been a Grand Prix jumper and he had done a great job. And then I showed him for a couple of years. He was awesome and he was healthy and he was 18. And we decided, you've done enough, big guy. It's time to go to pasture. And
Sure.
so that's where he went. And it's I think each one's a little individual. Some will keep going. I saw a horse the other day that was 23 that the people were still doing um, you know the 2'9" hunters with him. He
Mhm.
wasn't having to work too hard and he liked it. The horse was a pleasant horse and seemed to like his job. I think it can be fairly individualistic, but I think they'll start to tell you when it's time, basically.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, that about wraps everything up. Thank you everybody for attending. And of course, Dr. Mitchell, thank you so much for your time and insight. I think we all gained a lot of valuable insight today and really appreciate you taking the time.
More than happy to. It was fun to do it and to reflect on some of those things. And I actually made it all the way through it without crying. So there you go.
Well done. Well done. Well,
All
wonderful.
right.
Thank you so much.
Everyone have a great day. Okay.
All right. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.